Well, that was a little weird. How are y'all doing tonight for Jazz Suns tonight? The Jazz were without several key contributors, but we had a weird one tonight where they were pretty competitive for most of the game, so that was kind of unusual for us to follow and get excited for. So not a whole lot of NBA action tonight, but hopefully the folks who were trying to cap off their NBA Tuesday had a weird, fun game to finish. You had some Chris Paul doing his Chris Paul things too. So if you're a general NBA fan, you had some excitement there. Post this link out for our live postcast to a few of our Discord and Slack friends. Wait for people to kind of tune in here and talk about the weirdness that was tonight of Jazz Suns with no with basically no starters. The only starter being actually I forgot to mention that Royce O'Neal was also out today. So definitely a limited engagement tonight. Someone mentioned that I should crack open a beer at the start of these. And I got too excited and I cracked my beer early. Drinking a vanilla coffee cream ale tonight. It's delicious. It's Tuesday, so it's only like 5.5% or something like that. Just trying to keep it easy. So thanks for everyone for coming in and tuning in. We'll get this fired up soon and chat about Jazz Suns. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll get to talking about this in a minute here. Get the spaces going too if you're tuning in there. Take some questions or comments or insults or anything you want on the spaces too. I'll put you live on the internet. Don't worry, you don't got to show your face on spaces. That's always a good thing. All right, I think we got everyone tuned in. So let's talk about the nonsense that was tonight. So we kind of had another Toronto type situation coming in. If you guys recall that game, where we have to rest guys and have to kind of avoid coronavirus protocols, where if a player or anybody tests positive in Canada, they got to do a quarantine period in Canada, and it's kind of unclear what the return to the United States policy is with those kind of players. So we just didn't have any of those guys, any key contributor, go to Toronto in fear that anyone would test positive and need to stay in Canada for 2 weeks. So we kind of wanted to avoid that. Difference being today, keeping a lot of guys out who were actually injured. So we saw at the end of yesterday's loss against the Golden State Warriors, we saw Rudy strain his calf at the end of the game. Calf strains are very tricky. All the reporting says that it's mild, but if there is the trickiest muscle in your entire body to have a mild strain is the calf. And especially if you're 7 foot 1,000 like Rudy is. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Rudy Gobert actually miss extended time with a mild calf strain. And by that I mean like 2 weeks or so. He is the championship, right? He and Donovan Mitchell are the championship guys. And you don't want to mess with that, especially when it's a muscle-based injury and not like a bone thing or like a dislocated shoulder or something where you're kind of just going to fight through it and be a competitor. Yeah, calf strain is just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until it is fully healed. We saw Bogdanovich bang knees in the game yesterday, and he finished the game, I think, with adrenaline, but I guarantee you he woke up this morning feeling like shit. So he was out today. Donovan Mitchell's still in concussion. We don't know if he's out of the concussion protocol, but they're probably just, again, playing it safe with him. If he's not feeling right, doesn't need to go on these road trips, and, flying can be kind of rough for someone like him. I am no doctor, but the whole revelation this year that he needs glasses all the time but plays basketball without contacts because he doesn't like putting things in his eyes. I wonder how that affects someone with concussion symptoms, right? If you have kind of blurry vision, does that kind of hurt or affect just like your general disposition of how you're dealing with concussion? Mike Conley rested. Joe Ingles had a strain of, I forget what, I think it was a hamstring or something like that. And Royce also had a mild injury, but unlike a calf, those kind of larger muscle groups are a little bit. Let me be accurate. If I'm going to be pseudo reporter here, I'll look that up in a bit. But Joe Ingles and Royce O'Neal's injuries were not as alarming to me as Rudy Gobert's. So we have nobody playing. We have 0 starters. Hassan Whiteside hasn't played in forever because of coronavirus protocols. Yesterday against the Warriors, he was out due to conditioning, but he was out of coronavirus protocols. And very much similar to Udoka Azubuike, his first game coming back from a dislocated ankle. He's got to play the Denver Nuggets. Hassan Whiteside, congratulations, come back and play the number one seed in the West in the Phoenix Suns. Now the Suns were without DeAndre Ayton, but Whiteside was placed in a weird position to have to be a starter and play significant minutes. Azubuike got some first half run as well. Speaking of him, I'm not sure if he actually got in the game at all in the second half. I don't think he did. Played 3 minutes in the first half. Quinn Snyder just can't stand his mistakes. And I quibble with what Snyder can withstand or not withstand, and I think the Azubuike stuff I think is more tolerable from time to time than some of the stuff that Jordan Clarkson gets into. But we'll get into Clarkson in a minute because he definitely did play. Jordan Clarkson and will never miss a chance to jack up a bunch of shots. He played 34 minutes. He attempted more than twice as many shots as any other Jazzman. He had 20 shots, 22 points, 9 of 20, and your litany of problems with Jordan Clarkson. He was our leading scorer. Had a few nice dimes. I was actually impressed with some of his feeds in the paint. But 4 turnovers, 4 of 11 from 3, and a lot of those 7 misses were ill-advised. Defense was always kind of weird, right? Everybody else played, I thought, impressive defense on as you can reasonably expect against Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And Clarkson lost his guy a lot, played poorly on defense, and that was part of the issue. So, but he was kind of an offensive engine. But the real story for the Jazz today is going to be how much everybody else showed up to play with real intensity and fire. Really impressive. The number one guy, the star of the game for the Jazz, is not the leading scorer in Jordan Clarkson, but that goes to Trent Forrest, a guy I've never really believed in. I will probably continue to not believe it until he gets some semblance of an outside shot. 1 of 2 from 3 today. Great to see him attempting a couple. His other miss was a wide open corner 3, which that one went in. But there were, all players kind of miss threes from time to time. But Trent Forrest drove the ball with fervor and intensity a lot. I was impressed that he finished over big men a lot. That's how he was so efficient. He was 8 of 12 from the field. A lot of it was taking the ball into Bismack Biyombo and JaVale McGee, which were the Suns' 2 centers that they had available today. Jalen Smith also out for the Suns. He was, for those that don't know, Jalen Smith was a first-round pick of the Suns a little while ago, and he's been immediately terrible. Product out of Maryland. He was supposed to be promising, and they did not pick up his option, his next rookie year option in October. But Jalen Smith has really come on of late, so it's been really disappointing for I'm sure fans of his and himself that he can't get on the floor right now. I can't recall if it's coronavirus protocols or an injury for Jalen Smith, but he'll be back on the floor soon. DeAndre Ayton has a sprained ankle, and not clear when his return will be. But Ayton doesn't have a high ankle sprain, so it might not be too long. So Trent Forrest, I'll bring a full circle back to Trent Forrest. He was not scared of JaVale McGee or Bismack Biyombo at all. Took it right to him, and he had the energy and the oomph. Defended Booker well, defended Chris Paul well. Look, Devin Booker got up 35 shots, right? But he was 3 of 13 from 3. I don't think it was particularly efficient. And Devin Booker was a -3. today, and I thought a lot of that was just part of the defensive energy that I thought Utah showed from Trent Forrest and others. My second star of the game is going to go to Daniel House. He's on a 10-day, and he started. He is not on a hardship 10-day due to coronavirus. He is on a standard 10-day, which you can give to you can extend 2 10-day contracts in a row to a player before you have to sign him full time. Those who are still scarred by Stanley Johnson owning our shit for the Lakers is going through that situation right now with the Lakers. They're trying to clear up a roster spot for him, it looks like, because he seems to be well liked by LeBron and company. But Daniel House is on his first 10-day, comes back, starts. He had some weird plays because he's kind of thrust in a more ball handling type situation at times, but he also just took it right to the rim, and he had defensive intensity, and he was confident in shooting 3. 1 of 4 from 3, but everyone knows from his history he kind of got to guard him. His last 3 attempt had a weird form on it, though. I think his legs just were shot from under him, and he kind of catapulted it, but his other shots had a good form. 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. I love Daniel House today. His speed at getting around screens. He's a smaller guy. He's definitely like a shooting guard size guy. He's got maybe a little height to him. That guy gets around screens quickly, right? Royce O'Neal, his best skill is how well he's able to defend guys bigger than him, because that guy is a granite block with energy and speed, and he's got good lateral feet movement. But because of Royce's stature, Royce can die on screens on 7-footers. The guy just isn't that big. He's not that tall. And if he was, livelier, right, a little bit more skinnier, he might be able to navigate that with his height. But Royce is more of a stocky guy. He's solidly built. So Daniel House is different, right? He gets around those screens. And on the other end of the spectrum, guys like Mike Conley are too small. Like Mike Conley can do whatever he can. He's just he can't get around those screens very well. Chris Paul is kind of like he's a unicorn in this respect of and John Stockton was this way as well. Of like guys who are that short who are able to be strong enough and elbowy enough to get around those screens. I don't think Conley's that kind of guy. Donovan Mitchell, when he gives a shit, is probably the only guy on the Jazz that consistently gets around those screens when he cares. But House, I was really impressed with how well he got around the screens of Bismack Biyombo and JaVale McGee, and that really affected Booker and Paul, I thought, and the other ball handlers. So Jordan Clarkson's going to play minutes. We need Jordan Clarkson. The best version of the Jazz includes the best version of Jordan Clarkson. I think that should be absolutely made clear. As much as we bitch about him, Jordan Clarkson is that high variance cog that you're not going to lose a championship if he's at his worst. He's not going to help when he's there playing at his worst, but you're not going to lose it because of Jordan Clarkson. You might lose it because Quinn Snyder relies on him when he's struggling, but you're not going to lose an entire series in the playoffs because of Jordan Clarkson. To that end, Daniel House is a guy that if Jordan Clarkson just doesn't have it, or you don't need his offense, and you need a guy who has more acuity for defense on the perimeter, House is that guy. He's not Eric Gordon or Jeremy Grant, the trade targets we talk about a lot, as like guys who instantly you need to play them 30 minutes, and these are the guys that deserve a role. They're going to be good defenders and that sort of shit. Daniel House is a guy who you can give DNPs to. He doesn't have to play every night, but if you get into a matchup like against the Suns, I can foresee fully healthy. Take both teams fully healthy. Jazz Suns, conference finals, conference semifinals, whatever you want to have. And you end up with a bench unit that are usually Conley and Gobert bench unit, which is great. And you're going to have a kick-ass offense that way, and Gobert's going to clean up a lot of mistakes. But the Suns have this perimeter and mid-range oriented game that can really neutralize Gobert's strengths defensively. And you have Conley and Clarkson just getting roasted by Devin Booker and Cameron Payne, right? Or Devin Booker and Landry Shamet. Wouldn't you rather, instead of having Clarkson out there, put Daniel House out there and let Conley be the only ball handler? Or in usually these situations, you have a Joe Ingles out there as well. So you have your two ball handlers in Conley and Ingles, and now you have actual defense in Daniel House, who doesn't need the ball at all. I see that being a rotation solution against the Suns. Now, you play the Lakers, right? And they are a, Anthony Davis, LeBron James kind of situation, and their guards are terrible. Trevor Ariza right now is the worst player in the NBA. You end up with a bench unit of, and I'm shooting off the cuff of the Lakers rotation, but Kendrick Nunn, when he gets healthy, Trevor Ariza, Taylor Horton Tucker probably playing there. You probably have a bench unit that includes Anthony Davis at center, and this is during a LeBron rest, right? So you have Conley for Nunn and Gobert for Davis. That's a situation where I'm like, yeah, put Jordan Clarkson in that lineup, because he'll do great just torching 90,000-year-old Trevor Ariza, and Taylor Horton Tucker has been terrible. He has not lived up to his contract that he got in the summer. That's a situation where, like, yeah, keep the standard rotation, but I see a version of Daniel House helping the Jazz in the playoffs, and I hope it's not just the roster decimation that forced Quinn Snyder to play him, and he kind of rolled his eyes, and I hope that guy gets a contract for the rest of the season, because he was one of, like, the very few players I enjoyed watching tonight, and he was a reason the Jazz were in the game. Hassan Whiteside, I think it's worth talking about just because it's worth talking about. Let me check the phones first, too. I haven't had my Twitter open. If anyone on the Spaces wants to chip in or comment or anything, I'll take your call on live on the internet. But we're Hassan Whiteside. A lot of people are complaining about his performance today. Rightfully so. I mean, the guy was lazy as shit for the entire first half. Really unwatchable guy. And there are a lot of comments about, like, oh, this is the guy we thought he was. Like, this guy isn't worth it. Bad player. He's who he was. We saw in Portland and Sacramento. The problem was, in each of those teams is A, bad teams, and B, he was expected to have a little bit more of a primary role that he just can't live up to anymore. He doesn't have Eric Spoelstra and Dwayne Wade, breathing down his neck, getting the best version out of him. Like, when you're in that Heat culture, you must perform, right? And I think they have a very impressive culture down there in Miami. He's just expected to play 12 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes a night in 4-minute spurts. And he loves doing that, right? You get him, and with the way the Jazz do their rotations, Hassan Whiteside gets to play against starters, right? So Rudy Gobert comes out 5, 6, 7-minute mark, and Hassan Whiteside comes in, and usually the opponent still has their starters in. So he's playing against good players. He's fresh. He's got the energy, and he provides a different element. He provides a much more different offensive element as well. So that was I thought impressive that his first half of the season has been great for that reason. And we've seen him joking on the sideline. We know he likes being here. Everyone likes kind of having him. He's a weird personality. We signed him for the minimum. I almost thought it was a mistake to play him 33 minutes tonight. But Snyder likes the way he encourages guys, like, this is your role, and if you are the backup center and our starting center is out, you have now earned 33 minutes. I don't care how much you're playing like shit today. And Whiteside was lazy the whole game, typical Hassan Whiteside stuff, and his natural skill gave him a lot of great opportunities that he capitalized on. The 10 points, 9 rebounds. He had a huge block on Devin Booker late that I definitely think was a foul, but Devin Booker was wildly trying to posterize Whiteside, and Whiteside just didn't go straight up. He had his hand straight up in the air, but he went forward, right, and that should have been a foul. But it was a huge block, kept the Jazz in it late. Of note, the Jazz were winning after the third quarter, so this was a close game. I forgot to mention that. It's a 6-point loss, but the Jazz actually this wasn't just like catching up late on bench players. The Jazz played well. So I can equally say that Hassan Whiteside played poorly tonight. He was a team not leading -1, but he was up there. Team lead of plus minus. Eric Paschall was a +1. Also played terrifically tonight. Again, a guy that, unlike House, I don't know if there's a rotation. Actually, let me pause at Paschall. Let me finish the Hassan Whiteside point, which is Hassan Whiteside played poorly, and I also just don't give a shit. He's played well in his 10 to 12 minutes off the bench, and that's great. I think that's good. What I will have an issue with Quinn Snyder as we get to the playoffs, and actually this is a great bridge for the Eric Paschall comments. I will have an issue if Quinn Snyder insists on playing the same style on defense, and that requires having a 7-foot big playing drop coverage, which, as we've seen, hasn't exactly worked terrifically against some teams. And instead of trying some other options at the 5, Rudy Gay hasn't been very good at the 5, but Eric Paschall has at times. Actually, both Gay and Paschall have had their moments at the 5. And just blindly sending Whiteside out there just because he's the backup center and we want to play the same way, I think that would be a mistake. But as far as what Whiteside is, he's been great for the Jazz. He's fine. Wildly exceeding my expectations. That's pretty cool. So Eric Paschall, he got put on Booker and Paul on a few switches today, and I thought he kind of held his own, right? He wasn't like Gobert, where he's able to kind of use his length and his speed and his quickness to really contest those shots. But I was really impressed with Eric Paschall's ability to switch a little bit on some of these guards, and his offense was exactly what we wanted, right? Just a tank guy who was able to carve through the Cam Johnsons of the world. The Phoenix Suns had to play Ish Wainwright for a while, and so the Suns end up actually being kind of small, having to play like guys like Peyton and Shamet 20 minutes, 12 minutes for Peyton, I'm sorry. And Paschall just kind of carved through it with his strength, and that was really, like, that's like, in a certain matchup, you can say, like, I'm going to send out the wrecking ball on Eric Paschall, right? And he's going to play with fire, he's going to play with energy. It's unclear if Paschall's energy is infectious. Guys like, we've seen energy guys, like, part of the reason their energy is such a skill for a team is that it's infectious. And other players start to say, like, well, if that guy's playing off his marbles, like, I think I got it. I'm at the last 2 or 3 minutes of my rotation here. I think I got it in me to give a little bit harder on defense, or let me set this screen a little bit harder, or let me just dial in focus wise and not have a turnover. And I'm not seeing that infectiousness. I think everyone's happy for Eric when he does these really awesome plays and gets tough rebounds and gets and ones and stuff like that, but I don't see it bleeding over to the other players yet. Maybe that's just because Paschall is on a regular rotation guy, so it's like everyone kind of does their cute little golf claps, like, oh, look at the bench guy getting some minutes and providing energy. That's cute. If he had a more regular rotation role, it might be like, oh shit, it's Eric Paschall time. We know he's going to give a shit. We should all kind of lift up our energy as well. But he was nice tonight. I enjoyed watching him play. You get these weird games when, like, all your starters are out. What are you looking for? You're trying to enjoy the game of basketball, right? Chris Paul and Devin Booker are prime examples of how to not enjoy watching basketball. But we had a lot of players give reasons for joy tonight. Rudy Gay was delightful to watch. He had one botched layup, but otherwise he was a joy. And I'll go this long without mentioning Jared Butler's name, which I'm sure has completely pissed off like half of Jazz fans in the world. Jared Butler's a fine second-round ball handler. I think we're completely out of our minds with our expectations for him. He has zero spatial awareness for NBA defense. There's just none. You got to just hope that he's on the ball or he's guarding a complete non-entity offensively so that he can either just do his space out thing and it won't affect you, or when he gets crushed on a screen, he's just doing his job and he's trying, and your Rudy Gobert, your Hassan Whiteside will clean up the mess that he had because he's just not going to defend the ball well. So he's bad defensively. And that's not exactly his calling card at Baylor either. So no one's like, oh, well, that's a problem. All rookie point guards struggle with the NBA. And there's that like second to third to fourth year, like do they get it, right? And it's not only just figuring out the passing angles and such like that, or when to pick your spots shooting versus passing. It's defense, like just kind of understanding where you should stand and not just ball watching. That's key for an opponent point guard who is going to be guarding the basketball a lot of the time. The reason Trent Forrest is playing is because he at least understands that sort of basic defensive stuff from a ball handling perspective. And you'll note that Quinn Snyder never has Jared Butler out there as the lone ball handling kind of guy. And he's kind of usually out there with like a Trent Forrest because he knows that Jared Butler can just play off the ball, get the ball sometimes. Maybe he'll make a play on offense with the ball, but on defense, it's like just go stand in the corner and try not to fuck up. And so that's why he is unplayable at this point. Offensively, he was fine. It was great to see he nailed his threes, right? If he can, he was as good as like Landry Shamet was tonight, right? And I think Landry Shamet would be at this point a disappointing but fair outlook for Jared Butler as a guy who can make $4 to $6 to $10 million maybe, just being a great shooter and having a little bit of shake. That would be great. And yeah, Landry Shamet's kind of a decent comp. I mean, Landry Shamet at Wichita State was bad defender, good shooter, good ball handler, that kind of thing. And that kind of is fair for Jared Butler. Jared Butler's, I think, quite a bit smaller. I'm just saying Landry Shamet just because we were playing against him tonight. These ideas of Jared Butler as like this power backup point guard who you can really rely on as a six-man or a six-man scorer is like, that's in the stars at this point. And he's a rookie, so the stars are still in play for his capabilities and his outlook and his prospects. But Jared Butler is not exactly giving a whole lot of promise at this point. So I'm not thrilled with Jared Butler's overall career at this point, but he was totally good from offense. You'll look at the stats and say, okay, Jared Butler, 4 steals. How did that happen if he's such a bad defender? Team defense was poking the ball out of everywhere and forcing the Suns into a lot of turnovers, and Jared Butler ended up with the basketball. And one thing, I don't want to shit on Jared Butler too much because I will give him one huge compliment, is he and Daniel House and Trent Forrest, big reasons for this, they actually played fast break offense. And when Jared Butler did get those steals, he really helped set up a good fast break thing. So maybe he doesn't have the greatest physical tools in the world. That's part of the reason he's a second round pick. He's kind of like, all right, he's kind of short and slow with some shake. He's not molasses. He's not super slow. I mean, he was a capable NBA level point guard at athleticism wise, but he's not a speed guy. But part of fast break speed in the NBA is just having the mindset for it and having the energy for it and having the brains to go for it, and the fervor and just saying I'm going, pushing it down your throat. And if it doesn't end up an immediate shot attempt, the secondary break might leave a guy open, or maybe we can just reset and do that sort of thing. And Butler did have that mindset. Those 4 steals happen pretty well for him. I do think he had one good poke out steal. It's not like he's a potato, but at times he's kind of a potato on defense. So. Weird game. I just wanted to promise myself that we'd do a post game and talk about this weird one because the Jazz were down by 2 at halftime, and I said we would. So if anyone's got any questions or anything, I'll take them now. Otherwise, we'll sign off for the night. So we got some Twitter comments about Daniel House. Would I take Robert Covington and that contract or keep House? Robert Covington's an interesting case because his Robert Covington has been overvalued far more than he's actually worth, right? So I think you saw it immediately in Minnesota as just a guy who he completely outplayed his NBA prospects, and he's really earned his way into the NBA. He's a fine piece of the rotation. He ain't changed anything for the Jazz, and he's not a good help defender. He's kind of a better on-ball guy. He's good at grabbing steals. He's going to go 0 for 6 from 3, and it's going to piss you off. He's not a guy I would trade an asset for, is the issue, right? Like, he's not solving anything for the Jazz. And we'll get into this with trade stuff later. A lot of these guys, like Jeremy Grant, I'm not sure what they actually solve for the Jazz, considering what they would have to give up. Like, to get Jeremy Grant, you're going to have to give up Ingles or Bogdanovich. If for some reason a team wants Jordan Clarkson at this point, the Jazz should jump all over it. But that's not going to, like, the Kings don't want Jordan Clarkson, especially with their guard glut that they have. So, and then when you get lower, like guys like Robert Covington, like he's the tier below the Jeremy Grant types, then you're trading. It's the same situation because you have to trade salary to match. You can't just take on Robert Covington because you want to. That would be nice. What are you solving for in that situation? A little bit better defense, maybe, but he's kind of not a spectacular defender anymore. And it's not like Bogdanovich and Ingles are wretched poor defenders. Our issues of perimeter defense and guarding small guards is part system, part player. And by system, I mean like what I mentioned earlier about throwing Daniel House out there to kind of stem the bleeding against bench units when they have a Devin Booker kind of leading that bench unit and raining fire. Those are the types of situations that the Jazz should try to improve upon, because the Jazz are the number one offense, right? And we have the Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert, and we don't have to talk about it. We know why he is. The Jazz are trying to score more points than the other team, and that's a stupid basic tenet to talk about, but this team is trying to win offensively with enough defensive juice to really blow games open, right? If they have like a good defensive stretch, that's gonna win them the game, and that's what Rudy can do. But when you trade for a guy like Robert Covington to kind of improve the defense a little bit, that first in offense might become a fourth in offense real quickly, and I think that's bad and scary. So. I think that's our one question we had for tonight. I want to thank Adam for that question on Twitter comment. You can go ahead and request to speak next time. I'll give you the mic and you can ask it. I just don't think we can't get Covington without giving up a real asset, so I don't think that's realistic. And from there, we'll say goodnight. And we'll get the Suns again in a couple days. Maybe we'll have a starter or something to play. My name is Mark. I'm drinking beer, having a good time. I love the Jazz, and I'm still wildly optimistic about them for the rest of the season. I think you should be too. Team's fine. Enjoy it. Enjoy the good basketball. Maybe we'll have a good players back on Wednesday. Till then, have a good one.